Hello, my name's Elijah Wells, and today's review is Len Wiseman's new movie, Ballerina. Taking place between the events of Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 of the John Wick films, Eve, played by Ana de Armas, is an assassin that's been trained in a very similar way as John Wick, as in going up the ranks of the Rostro Roma. And only this time she is motivated to take on the entire army of this cult that basically kidnaps the assassin's children, and of course kill anyone that was responsible for her father's death, and of course crossing paths with John Wick being portrayed by Keanu Reeves. To say the movie had a fairly turbulent production was saying it very lightly, as the film did wrap up production initially in 2023, but however the following year it was given a lot of reshoots and a lot more rewrites to boot, and even with some rumours of its director Len Wiseman was not being present on scene, not being present during the shoot, with the film's usual producer Chad Stahelski, you may know, directing a lot of the previous John Wick movies, being present, even though the claims have been refuted. But however, there were some test screenings that apparently didn't go well, and of course did cast a massive shadow about whether Ballerina would be even a worthy successor of the John Wick films, given the fourth one was essentially seen as definitively the final installment of the John Wick film franchise. And we go over to the film's director, Len Wiseman, who has a very interesting portfolio to say the least. Not just directing the first two Underworld movies, the famous gothic horror vampire movies that peaked in 2000 with the first film, then its sequel, Evolution. Then directed Live Free or Die Hard, or Die Hard 4.0 as it's known in my country of the United Kingdom. Then went on to produce the other, and if not the rest of the Underworld film franchise. Then later directed the Total Recall remake with Colin Farrell, even though the film wasn't that well liked with critics, and seemed to somewhat just disappeared into just doing mostly just television stuff. And his most notable work is doing quite a lot of episodes of the series Lucifer. And that, knowing this is his first film he had directed in 13 years after the Total Recall movie, and that he has pretty much had really minimal, somewhat minimal productions between that time and now here, is very interesting to see what was going on within that time. He did, although he, like I said, he kept occupied with commercials and the Lucifer series, and that he is known for essentially bringing the famous goth horror franchise to life with the Underworld franchise. So, let's see how he turns John Wick around with Ballerina. I was, like I stated earlier, very apprehensive about this movie, considering that, of course, John Wick was essentially killed off in the fourth installment. A spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. And of course, with the death of the main character, it'll be a bit weird to make another installment of the John Wick franchise when the title character was killed off in the last installment. But, however, it did eventually make a little bit more sense, as Ballerina is going to take place between the third and fourth installment, but mostly takes place during the third installment of the John Wick film franchise. And we do occasionally, in two scenes, to see Keanu Reeves as John Wick, again with his usual gun fu play and his gunplay, which is again usually excellent and usually brilliant, as we do see throughout the entirety of the John Wick series. And how does Ana de Armas pretty much level up to, let's say, compared to Keanu Reeves? As in, I feel like as his first impression, I feel like she does give off a very strong first impression, as we do see for like John Wick, as particularly in the first film, as it's already been established, like he's already as well established within the ranks, he's already known in the high table, he's already known pretty much throughout the entire community that he serves. And for Eve being portrayed by Ana de Armas, it does make it very clear that she is literally, this movie is about her starting from the bottom, training and wiggling away through the ranks of the Roscoe Roma, which is again a tradition of assassins that they all follow. And of course, the movie does keep to the code and the world building of the John Wick film franchise, with the famous coins, and of course the famous continental hotels, and the famous dense world building and the politics around the assassins and the mysterious cult that's been of assassins that usually is hell bent on kidnapping children of assassins, which is again it does add a little bit more of a layer, more of a neo-noir layer to it. And of course the gunfighting choreography is again brilliant, which is again, gunfu is inspired by the works of John Woo, who is his best known works are like Face Off and Mission Impossible 2, but is also known in his native country of Hong Kong for films like Hard Boiled and Better Tomorrow. And of course, not just Keanu Reeves is also in this movie. There's also other usual, like Ian McShane as Winston, who's again offers a brief performance and gives Eve the whereabouts and do's and don'ts with the cult that kidnaps children of assassins. And of course, there's Lance Reddick, who unfortunately passed away in 2023. And this is, of course, his as I'm aware right now, this is his final movie he is in. And even though the film was shot way back in finished its first chunk of filming in early 2023, and he passed away apparently not long after that, unfortunately. Despite, again, he only has, showing the scene with Winston, he's only in the film for like 5 minutes tops. Again, even though he plays a concierge of the hotel at the Continental, I feel like this is the best way. I feel like the film franchise honors his memory, even though he's done like a lot of work, particularly in The Wire, and one of my favorite online sketches being the Toys R Me sketch from Funny or Die. I feel like this is the best way to honor his legacy and his character in his franchise. So, thank you, Lionsgate and Len Wiseman, for giving this character one last shot, and it was very dignifying for him, for both Lance and for Caron. We also do get to meet up with Daniel Pine, being betrayed by Normus Reed. You may best known for his stuff in the Walking Dead series, and as well as Death Stranding. And I feel like of all the characters they should have really improved, it was definitely his character. Like, I feel he was only in for like a couple scenes and only like 2 scenes, but I feel like he should have a much more of a prevalent role in my opinion. Like, even though he's the father of a child that eventually gets kidnapped, but I feel like you should at least know what you. Even though it does it does just justify why he wasn't in the film all that much when you figure out what happened at the end. But I feel like they should have at least dialed the character a lot more, in my opinion, like giving him a bit more prevalence in this movie. I feel like not exactly wasted Norman Reed at all, but I feel like they should have utilised him a lot more better than this film. Like, I feel like he could have been the mysterious person that was always lurking in shadows, but in my opinion, I think he was most prevalent when he was in the fight scene in a hotel, the Continental in Prague, Czech Republic, which he was only there then a little bit at the end, which, again, I wish we understood the character a lot more to sympathise with him, but I feel like at that point, and maybe the rewrites or reshoots kind of sacrificed something out of him, so we kind of get a base level reading of Daniel Pines. But again, I wish we could have achieved a little bit more about the character, in my opinion. And the action scenes are really good as for the standards that you expect from John Wick. And thankfully, the movie does up the brutality of not just the previous films, but it does up the brutality and the bloodiness, not just from the previous movies, but also from how the film starts. As I think my first concern is, after the first like 20 or so minutes, like I'm wishing the violence was a tiny bit more bloody and a bit more brutal, but thankfully they do deliver on that, as the violence is, of course, as you expect from John Wick, pretty bloody, and it can get really brutal. Like, weapons are used of not just, of course, guns and knives, which are usual at this point, but of course we have some axe play thrown for good measure, flamethrowers, a massive water pipe, and of course some ice skating shoes. Basically used like knuckle dust, almost used like nunchucks, which is again really intense and almost makes me scared to do ice skating because I might actually slash someone. But again, some very creative ways of using weapons as seen in like the other films, like let's say knives or like pencils or guns, of course, and even like some old East Asian weaponry, like in the early scenes of John Wick 3. although some characters in the movie should have had a little bit more than was on the screen because we got only just a base level reading out of it, but I feel like this is a pretty solid entry out of the John Wick franchise. The gunplay is really cool in this movie, the fight choreography is absolutely great. Ana de Armas, who plays Eve in this movie, does give off a really great first impression of the movie. Like, I'm pretty much chilled to see like another sequel for this movie if Lionsgate wants to follow through on that. I feel like again this is a really good installment of the John Wick franchise. Particularly, this is the first spin-off franchise they did. And of course, even for a very brief cameo that we do see of Keanu Reeves and Ian McShane and Lance Reddick. Again, they all, despite being series usuals at this point, they all give out some really great performances despite being in the film for a relatively short amount of time, and the impact they have is also really good. And the movie's world building definitely adds to the world's mysterious neo-noir atmosphere of the film, and how a new layer has been added on, being the cult that kidnaps children of assassins, and how their world operates as a juxtaposition to how John Wick's normal world works. So, for Ballerina, I am feeling a 7 out of 10 on this one. So, what do you think of Ballerina? Comment down below, subscribe to my channel, like this video, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and Letterboxd, and this is Elijah Wells, and bye!